I think so. We are here, is a fact. My daughter just called. I missed her call, but that's great. Okay. Okay, I see us. We were live. Hi. Welcome. So I want to introduce Heidi. And how do you say your last name?
It's the only occurrence of the silent O in the English language that I'm aware of. So it's pronounced Loeppky.
Oh.
There's an O in there, but just ignore that.
Okay. But the O is the big, becoming nothing, becoming zero, in a way. The O has a big significance in some ways in the communication of awakening.
It might say something about my upbringing that I was taught to ignore the O. I was raised in a very Christian, fundamentalist Christian house.
Yes.
So it's been a long journey to the way that I think of those things now.
Yeah. Isn't it, I don't know about you, but a lot of my journey has helped me to actually include that in a way, in the Christ teachings and which are, there were some beautiful things that came out of that. I was also brought up in a Christian environment and had some againstness.
Yeah, where I really came to embrace the teachings because I went through a period of almost atheism, really kind of hating the word God and just feeling this grating energy every time someone said God. I just shut down. Oh, I don't even want to hear that word. And it took me being in the north of India, in Rishikesh, actually, sitting in yogic lectures, hearing about Jesus and his teachings from that perspective.
Yes.
To realize this is really amazing. Like the principles, the stories, the way that he lived his life, and all of the secret keys that are available in the Christian teachings are beautiful.
Yes.
But none of those came through in the transmission from the church. Like you really have to go to the source. And I think there's a big difference between the essence of a religion and the administration of a religion. So I'm all about the essence. Go back to the original text, go back to the original teachings and drink from that well, because it's hard to find a religion that doesn't have beauty at its core. But I think we tend to use it in an administrative way, and it gets into the red tape and the control, and it's easy to forget the beauty.
Yes. Yeah. No kidding. I also discovered some of that in Rishikesh. Because I had some againstness, or fear, that had been conditioned in my Sunday school, teaching of Christianity, and created a separate God, an objective God that we had to do something special to get his attention.
Yeah, and God is this kind of sadistic voyeur, which is what we're all taught in Sunday school. He's watching you, and if you do anything bad, he's going to punish you.
Yeah. He and Santa Claus pretty close together.
Yeah. One thing I love about Hinduism is how inclusive they are of other religions. There isn't this fear that if they're right, it means I'm wrong. There's this inclusivity inherent in Hinduism that sort of allows for multiple truths.
Mhm.
which has always resonated with me so much more deeply than you're wrong, or if I'm right, you have to be wrong. It's not a high truth for me. It's a lower level of truth, that duality.
Yeah, for sure. So how did this happen for you? Where, it wasn't the path you were on, or maybe it was. Maybe it's the path we're all on. We're just not aware. And
Yeah, when I think about that, when I think about Tantra, which is the path that I'm on now, I feel like there's kind of two schools of thought. And there's the people that look at what's possible in Tantra and they deny it. They say, that's not true, that's not possible, because I've never experienced it. Therefore, it can't exist.
mhm,
That's one school of thought that I encounter.
mhm,
And then there's this whole other group of people who, when they arrive in my class for the first time, or they're on a coaching call, and they're sharing all these things that they've experienced, all of these things that they know, that deep in your soul knowing. And they thought they were weird and they thought they were strange, but really they were just tantric.
mhm.
It's something that so many people, and I believe all of us, I 100% believe all of us are naturally tantric, because to me, tantra is reality. It's one of the most beautiful philosophies because it focuses on all of the different relationships in our life,
Mhm.
focuses on life as a system of interdependent relationships. And so we know this stuff. And so many people have this moment, it's like a sigh of relief. It's like a eye popping out with wonder when they realize all these things that I've felt and that I've suspected and that I have known, they're real. It's this external validation of there's a whole system that works with this stuff. And then usually there comes a moment of joy that, wow, I can join with the community, I can read books, and I can go deeper into these things that I already know. And so for me, I was in that camp. I knew these things, and I had never been told that they existed. I'd never had the teachings revealed to me. So I thought there was something a little strange about me. But, I became a chartered accountant, a CPA. And I remember during my undergrad being in an English lit class. We were studying authors like E. E. Cummings, Andrew Marvell, really classical, a little bit uptight English authors. And whenever I read these poems, I was certain that there was an underlying meaning, that they were actually talking about the alchemy of energy and masculine and feminine, and how we can use these energies to invigorate us and create immortality. And so all of my essays were just way off in left field. My professors didn't know where I was getting this information, but it made sense. So I got A's on all of these papers, but it was coming out of seemingly nowhere. And as I went through my corporate life working for a big four accounting firm, I was always kind of the square peg in the round hole. And people would come in and talk to me because I did things differently. And I think there was a sense that people wanted to work with me because I was connected to that humanness, to that relationship, but still not really understanding
More
why.
alive. You were more alive.
More alive. That's it, David. Like Tantra is this very alive way of relating with everything. It's a very juicy, exciting way of relating with everything from a tree to an interview to your big toe. So I think people can sense that. It just creates a different alchemy in the air.
Mhm.
And so that moment when I had my realization was actually in India when I took my very first Tantra class. And the experience for me was like a Rubik's Cube that had been all askew, just clicking instantly into place. And it
Right.
was like, suddenly I saw the pattern and how deep it could go. And it was so exciting that I did a 180. I lived in Asia for 2 years after, sleeping on floors in monasteries, visiting ashrams, getting a hold of any intentional tantric community that I could, meeting gurus. I dove in because it was so compelling to me. Uh, and for a while, I balanced the accounting and the Tantra. I was working online. And then it came to a point where it was just too boring. The numbers were too boring when there's that much excitement
Mhm.
everywhere else. And at that point, I dropped it and started doing this full time. And I still go every year to India or Thailand or somewhere where I can continue studying and immersing in the community and in the beautiful teachers.
That's wild. That's awesome. Not this year, but we're gonna.
Well, it's not looking that. It seems that I'm being called to stay in Edmonton, and I haven't made an official decision about that because I
Yeah.
haven't wintered in Canada for 7 years. But if I feel called to stay, if that continues, I will. I will stay.
Do you feel that the call is also to serve? You know,
It kind of feels that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
that maybe what what's happened for you is, um, I believe it grows through giving it away, and that we see ourselves in the people that come to us, and and the awakening continues through, yeah, through sharing.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, it really doesn't matter where we are, in a sense. So, yeah.
It's kind of for me. So this is just my own personal feeling. It almost seems like I'd be missing it if I went back to Thailand or Bali or India. Like I could have it's a beautiful life and I have so many friends there and I know that they're anchoring a lot of energy for us here, which we need. But there's something about the uncertainty of what's happening in the world. I think it's the warrior in me. It's like, no, I want to be on the ground. I want to be on the ground where it's happening.
Front
Uh,
line.
in the front line. So I don't know what you want to call that, but I definitely feel that circuit running a little bit in
Yeah, good for you.
me.
Um, I want to share that we've never met really before, and somehow, you just came through the ethers, and I saw you and what you were doing, and watched a piece of one of your videos just as I was perusing on Facebook, and I followed the string, and I think it's great that we got to do this. It's a um, my mind always wants to to make meaning,
Mm.
or understand, and there's just no one understanding. Years ago, a teacher taught me that understanding was the booby prize, and that just being uh, was the possibility, and so I'm glad that we met, and that we were able to share, and of course also not knowing who's watching, and what spot we may
Yeah.
be a part of, you know.
Yeah. And could I share a little about our talk before we went live?
Please.
Yeah. We had kind of an egg crack moment, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
As we were preparing for the interview, there was something that came up for me, a vulnerability, and I don't know you. I've never met you before, and so part of me said, just push it to the side, just do this interview and go forward. But something in me was craving that realness, I think, and there was something I needed your help with in this interview. And when I spoke that, it's like the strangeness evaporated. And suddenly I was sitting there with an old friend. Suddenly the air in the room changed. Suddenly the moment had this velvety thickness to it. And we almost couldn't speak. we were in that place, that beyond understanding place where we were just being.
Yeah, love.
Yeah.
Love. It was,
Yeah.
thank you. I feel it.
And I hope that if you're watching this, you can feel that too, that you're being swept up into the bubble. Yeah. And it was a reminder to me of those seemingly insignificant moments of speaking your truth when your mind has 10 reasons why it's not necessary to speak your truth.
Yeah.
And your heart is afraid because it's vulnerable and courageous, or maybe it's not the right time. And how the best answer for me is always to speak that truth. And you don't know what's going to come from it.
You were
It's like
very,
jumping off the edge of a cliff.
you were very courageous. Thank you. You know, you did split me. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And thank you for receiving that. I think we could design a whole workshop around our interaction, and just the strength that it took for you to hold something that could have been a trigger, could have been seen as an attack even. The way our tricky minds work, we're very, very possible and able to kind of mold and interpret things as an attack or a criticism. And instead, you just held me in that space. And so I'm really happy that I did.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what wants to come is this around something that I don't even know if I believe in, but there was this trust, and or knowing when you spoke that just got me to sit quietly and just be there, and
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes me think. I recently had a conversation with someone, and we were not seeing eye to eye on intimacy and how it's possible to be intimate with reality. That's one of my favorite definitions of Tantra, and Christopher Wallace speaks about it. Tantra is intimacy with reality. And that has no exceptions. And so that includes the person at the cashier in the grocery store. That includes the person who's asking you for money on the street. That includes the feelings of fear when you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week. And when we've been hurt, we can sometimes create a story that intimacy is not natural and not beneficial.
Not
But
so.
for me, and I think, I hope for the people that have been in my coaching and in my workshops, there's an unfolding where this vulnerability starts to fortify our strength, starts to fortify our warrior. And something that feels in the moment makes us feel like we're naked in the world, like we have no protections whatsoever, is exactly what makes us strong enough to have the kind of relationships that we want and to be the people in the world, the warriors, the lovers, the leaders in the world that we want. It comes from that willingness to be vulnerable. And I believe from that desire to pursue intimacy in every moment. No matter how much they say it's impossible, it's not. I think we kind of showed that to ourselves today. It's
Yeah.
always possible.
Yeah. Be here now, yes. In sometimes I think for me, if there's anything missing, it's I like what you're saying about, the desire to feel more intimacy or be more intimate. It's a bit of a different language for me, because the language I use is around being here now, or being present, or awakening to the moment, or surrendering, and maybe they're all intimacy words, but I think that sometimes the just loving in the moment is not I think that I could do more of that, be more quiet, more present, and so I really appreciate what we did. It was like, thank you, and it was we could have. I thought, wow, we never spoke again. That was quite beautiful. And that was like, thank you.
And that feeling that you get when you're in love, and
that's it.
All of your senses are heightened. You can taste things more, and smell better, and the sky looks more beautiful. And you have more energy. Suddenly your projects are easier to do, and you're smiling at everyone.
Yeah.
For me, that's because we're high on this drug of intimacy. Yeah. Certainly there's biological factors. We're also high on a concoction of chemicals, but there's an intimacy that's woven into that experience. And that's kind of the fuel. If you talk about surrender and be here now and all of those things, sometimes the intimacy is the rocket fuel that can get us there.
Nice.
It's so potent.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require a human romantic partner to go there. That's actually our training ground. The way that you feel when you meet that human romantic partner, everything, all the bells and whistles that I just described, you can have those with any part of reality. You can have those when you wake up and look out your window and you see a bird sitting on your windowsill. You can have the same sensual, emotional experience of that intimacy. And so I think relationship, like sex, are training grounds for us to open our horizons and realize that this experience is possible. The moment of orgasm, I think, is God's homing device to us. Like, hey guys, there's this incredible cosmic state of awareness available to you. Ding, ding, ding. Like, would you like to more?
Yes.
Yeah. And then those of us who like that and whose curiosity is sufficiently piqued will begin to pursue that in other arenas of life too, not just sex. That's the place that you can get to by meditating. That's the place you can get to by fully being here now and fully surrendering, fully being present with the moment. So it's beautiful how these little breadcrumbs are dropped for us to always remember who we are and what we're capable of.
Last fall I did the Enlightenment Intensive, the Satori experience, and which I have been running away from since '94.
Wow.
I did a little bit of it in '94, and it scared the heck out of me. It was like, oh my God, and when everything disappeared, when it all let go, and I had that, that space of the colors. It was, of course, because I'm kind of an old street junkie, I had, I always related things to acid, my God. and that's the feeling, that's what happens. When love comes, when I shouldn't say when love comes, when I become aware of love, when I'm
Mm.
conscious of love, and, yes, when I breathe love in, when love is the moment. Yeah, I hear you. I mean,
Yeah.
I fell in love with you in on the phone.
Mm. We fell into that space.
Yes.
It was there. Yeah. And I love what you just said about, the acid explorations, because it's a subtle shift for us. We all want to experience these states because they're really peak human experiences. But it takes a subtle shift from our pill popping mentality, give me the pill, I want it now, to a slightly longer term approach. Okay, I want the experience, but I'll sign up for the enlightenment intensive. I'll do the Tantra course or training, and I'm going to have to put in a few more hours. But then the place that I get to, it's going to have all the same colors, if you're visual, or you'll experience it in a different way if you have different tendencies. But that experience is, for me, more real, more yours, that no one can take away from you. It doesn't depend on any substance that you've ingested. And because you're coming into it from this really grounded place, you're not taking an external substance, it's very integratable into your reality. Sometimes it's really difficult if we are going from a level 1 on our intimacy with reality. The daily fireworks in our life are non-existent. And then we take something, like a drug, and it can blow our mind because we don't have the inner infrastructure set up for that experience yet.
Yes.
But if we go there slowly through meditation, through Tantra, through conscious communication, it's like these neural superhighways are already instilled in us, and we can handle that energy, and we can maintain that state of being. Because sometimes we have this incredible experience and we feel I'm one with the universe. And then the next day we go shopping and we're a complete asshole to the person in line behind us. Because we haven't integrated those two. We're kind of split in our
Yeah.
psyche.
I am one. Just don't fuck with me.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think drugs are amazing to open our horizons and to
Yes.
show what's possible. And then if we want to live that way and be that on a perpetual basis, we got to go back and take the medium to long-term approach and do the work so that we are the one in the grocery store and not just on the meditation mat.
Yeah. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm going to take a moment. I'd love to share this on my personal page. So
Okay.
is that okay if I take a moment and do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. I was sharing with you that I've been listening to a lot and watching Muji,
Mm-hmm.
and of course Muji says it doesn't take any time. Let's just be there now. And he walks us into the space of leaving everything behind, and he really masterfully brings those who are, I don't want to say ready, but in a way you're absolutely right. We need to percolate and become aware of who we are so we can surrender or let those things go. If I've been living in fear, or I've been living in guilt or shame, or in anger or desire, and I become aware of myself, and I'm able to just surrender that, as it comes, judgment, complaint, and a process of that, I think makes us more available to uh, knowing thyself allows us to be more available for what you're speaking of, living in bliss,
Mhm.
in the moment, to have that experience that we had on the phone, moment to moment. And yeah, and
Yeah.
I agree that without you this morning, the relating, um, that 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 wouldn't have happened for me,
Mhm.
and so the beauty of having an experience of another can help us to see who we are in our natural state.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I feel like you're speaking to some of the subtle differences between the different spiritual paths and how each of them have a little bit of a different way of approaching it. And for me, I have spent hundreds of hours in meditation retreats. I'm over 1,000 hours in just meditation retreats alone, not to mention my daily practice. So I love the transcendent approach,
Yes.
which is the path of meditation. It's a very masculine spiritual path where we're maintaining that vertical awareness, and we're bringing all of our energy up from the physical realms and into these transcendent realms of truth, of what we really are before we come down onto this earth. And in Tantric language, we often speak of the difference and sameness of Shiva and Shakti,
Mhm.
who are these two opposite poles of reality. And they represent, among many other things, the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And so, what Tantra says about that approach, which I've spent so much of my life doing, is that we're really kind of undoing the creation of Shakti. When we're transcending our physical reality and transcending our emotions and shooting our awareness to source, to the unmanifested, we're kind of undoing all of the beautiful spider webs that she's woven and all of the things that she's created. And so, another alternative on the spiritual path, one is not better, but another alternative is the feminine spiritual path, which Tantra very much is, which says instead of transcending the physical, material, emotional worlds to reach consciousness, to reach Shiva, who's up here, who's undifferentiated, who has no shape and no form, what if we called Shiva down into the body, into the emotions, into the everyday physical experience, and united those two lovers that way? And it's like flipping the lens. You can get to the same place. You can go to enlightenment, to truth, to full actualization through Shiva, or you can go through Shakti. But because they're really two sides of the same coin and they can't be separated from each other, the end point is the same. But in my last 10 years, I've been going more towards the feminine side, and I've been noticing there's different qualities that are available through that path, where every single emotion is this sacred offering of Shakti, this sacred source of energy that if I learn how to ride it, it'll take me to Shiva, and I don't need to just drop it all. So it's a subtle difference, but it's one thing that I love about the tantric path because it's so juicy. It's so full of color and so full of emotion, and it also embraces both the light and the dark, both the sacred and the profane. So
So can you tell us a bit about learn how to ride it?
yeah, I can. I think one of the most important things is a curiosity. So I'm going to go around in circles a little bit and then I'll come back to your question. But I want to speak about the quality of being curious about the things that aren't comfortable, that aren't, quote, pure, that aren't even spiritual. And so, as a personal example, I love living in beautiful places. I love clean, garbage on the ground really bothers me. Pollution really bothers me. I like everything to be quiet for my meditation and very serene. But at the moment, I've chosen to live in an area that has a lot of crime, a lot of people living on the street. And I get woken up nightly by an episode, by an altercation that's happening. And had I done this 3 years ago, it would have driven me crazy. I'm trying to be a spiritual practitioner here. How am I going to do this in this kind of environment, right? But because I've been cultivating this attitude of curiosity, I'm asking myself in every moment, how can I find the divine in this moment? How can I use the potency of this energy to connect to Shakti? How can I feel more intimately a part of reality by being here? And there's a number of practices that I do, but at the core, there's a different attitude. It's not the attitude of transcendence, of get me out of this unconscious environment. It's an attitude of, I love this word, interpenetration. And it's a weird word. It came to me through an experience that I had. But for me, it means, and it speaks to the responsiveness of the universe and the feedback loop that's inherently built into the universe. We are learning so much in quantum physics about quantum entanglement and how two particles that were physically connected at one point remain connected energetically to infinity. And one thing, what happens to the first particle happens to the second. And so we're in this infinite feedback loop of relating. And it's a very responsive universe. There's no separateness. The mechanistic view of the universe is just not accurate, whether you look through the lens of spirituality or science. And so the word interpenetration to me is a really sexualized kind of intimate way of interacting with whatever's in front of you, where you're bringing conscious awareness to that feedback loop, to that responsiveness, to if I move my shoulder this way, you feel it. And whatever movement you do next is somehow connected to that. And that's kind of the attitude, to circle back, that helps us when we learn to ride these emotions, because it's curiosity. Our first impulse when we feel a challenging emotion is push it away or cover it up with chocolate, with a drink, with sex even. But what if we thought there might be something juicy about that awful emotion? The feeling of betrayal is a really hard one, which I've been dancing with myself. And can I ride the sensations and the emotions of betrayal? And so I can give you an example of how to ride these. Start to feel the energy of the emotion and see if you can find it in your body. Like when I feel betrayed, where in my body do I feel that? And maybe I feel that right in my solar plexus. And then I can investigate, well, what does it feel like? Does it feel like little knives stabbing? Does it feel like a heavy rock? And then feel that just as energy. And they'll have a different energy. The stabbing is like this really sharp, really precise, cold kind of energy. And the rock is like a really dull, heavy, dense energy. And once I'm feeling it as energy, I can actually allow that energy to circulate through my whole body. And this is why they say Tantra is not for the faint of heart, because it's a really hard path. It's a very courageous path. But what happens if you've got, good guidance? This is something it's good to do with a coach, or you can try it on your own. Check in with your intuition if you're ready for it. Once you've kind of allowed that energy to spread through your whole body, and you feel it through your whole body, and then you can realize that separate from the meaning, separate from all the mental ideas of betrayal, this has a life of its own. It has an aliveness of its own. And you can then start to harness it for something else. Well, what if this was the energy that allowed me to be a warrior in the world? What if this is the energy that allowed me to love fearlessly? Because those dense emotions, they're like these little nuclear resources of energy if we know how to hack them, to ride them, to let them expand and use them in a beneficial way. So I hope that makes sense. It's kind of a complex process,
Well,
but
it makes sense to me. It
yeah.
does, you know. Without all of that, when I'm talking to people, what I say, which is, I think similar when I say, well, if you sense fear comes up, be there, come to the moment, use fear actually as the vehicle to be here, and or if anger, use anger as the, so I think that we're building on the same foundation. And Muji talks about it too, doesn't he? He says, to build your house on the rocks of what you just spoke of. That's the underpinning. We feel these emotions and doubts and yeah, pushing them away uh, is, I mean, they're like you said, they're it's all one. It's part of who we are, and we're incomplete without them. You know,
Yeah.
you know, and is that what you mean?
Yeah. And they're really all lovers in different forms, of different shapes and different qualities. And just like every time you fall in love, there's an opportunity to get hurt. Every time one of these emotions comes, there's an opportunity to get hurt. And so we can choose to protect ourselves by putting up a barrier and sending them away. And that's our choice. And I understand. I understand the validity of that choice, but it's a choice to be dead while you're alive, really. Um, we have to say yes to the risk of life if we want to be alive
Yes,
fully.
the magic word. Yes,
Which one?
yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. And that's why I love the tantric path, because you can say yes, even to things that you might want to run the opposite direction from, because they're portals. They're portals into life, into living actually fully. And I am a full subscriber to the belief that you can only fully live once you face death.
Yes.
As long as you're running from death, you're probably running from most of life. And once we can face that, then we can ride anything that comes, and we can find the pleasure in anything that comes. But it's tough. It's not easy, and it's also really sort of counter culture to everything that we're taught.
Yes.
Even what's happening in the world right now. It's there's something that is a risk to us, so we should just shut down. We should disconnect from everything and go into like a little mechanistic model, a vacuum where we can't be touched by this thing. And that might work. It might keep us safe in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to degrade our natural systems of wellness and our natural systems of thriving. So it's a courageous path.
Hmm. Heidi,
A little computer freezing seems to be happening.
a little bit, yeah, but that's okay. I can hear you um, quite well. We're still connected with audio. Can you hear me? I'll bet. that Heidi comes back. What a great conversation this has been. As we're talking, I'm thinking, wow, we could do this once a week. I would love that if we did it once a week. She's amazing. So hang in there. I'll bet she comes back. And let's, I would like to find out how you people who are watching can get in touch with her. And I think that her insight, her awareness, her consciousness would be, beneficial for lots and lots of people. So, yeah. I wonder, what do you think of the conversation so far? Been really good for me. Really good. I wonder if she's coming back. What do you think? There we go. Well, we're still live, and it's interesting. Earlier today, when I do a broadcast in the morning, and there are so many paths to awakening, to self-realization, and this Tantra path is an amazing. Hi, there you are. You're still on mute. There we go. Hi.
Sorry, I think my internet decided to take a break.
I told everybody you were coming back. And
okay.
There you are.
I'm back.
I was singing your praises while you were away. And I promised it, folks.
Aw.
I promised folks that we'd find out how they can get in touch with you. And
okay, yes.
Yep. And I was planning that we could do this every week. I said, let's see, I think we could do a chat every week.
Let's see what people think, if they would like that, or if there's anything they'd like us to discuss in particular.
Yeah, there's lots of possibilities, and while you're away, I shared that there's so many paths to self-realization, to awakening, to enlightenment, to and that the Tantra path is, the Tantrikas. I don't think a lot of folks in the West realize what a grand teaching it is, and how like yoga, folks think that yoga is something they go to a warm classroom to do, and not everybody, of course, but some folks do, and don't realize how deep it is, and the many branches of Tantra are, have you been, obviously you've been studying the depth of it.
It's one of those things. I just feel excitement in my belly as you speak to this, because it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland. Like you think that Tantra or yoga is this nice thing, and it's almost like the little shoot in your garden that you see, and it's like an inch tall. And you're like, oh yeah, that's great. It's got lots of benefits. But then you don't realize that under the surface of the soil, there's this intricate root system that stretches deep below into the surface. And there's so many within Tantra, so many lineages that people can spend their whole life just on one of hundreds and never get to the bottom. It's such a deep well. And the part that it's most famous for is the sexual arm. But this is really about 3 or 4% of the world of Tantra, maybe less. And so if you imagine, all the books that have been written on tantric sex and all the podcasts and all the classes, that's like 4% of what's available in the tradition, 4% of what you can do with it. It's really a deep spiritual practice, like you said, and a lot of tantric practitioners are not doing these, Kama Sutra poses. Their practice, for example, is to sit and stare at a dot on the wall for 8 hours a day, and there you are with your tantric practice. It's not quite as glamorous as we often think.
Osho wrote quite a bit about Tantra. He was I would say a practitioner, in his teaching, the books that they published were some, I'm going to say 500 plus in the Osho catalog, from over the years, and lots of it was Tantra. Have you studied some Osho, or have you looked into some of what they did?
Yeah, I've spent a fair amount of time in the Osho community, and been at the commune, and spent a lot of time with people deeply rooted in that tradition. I've got a lot of his books, and I feel like Tantra is a very revolutionary path, and within Tantra, Osho was a revolutionary. So he was like the rebel of the rebels.
He was. I have stories. I will tell you another time, but yes, he certainly was. And I encourage people to look into Osho and into some of his writings, and it's he was quite something.
He was absolutely brilliant in the new worlds that he was able to crack open for people in the West. Absolutely brilliant. The things that he brought to us that we wouldn't be able to access otherwise, because he knew how to fuse both worlds. I mean, that's really, really, if you want to talk about how tantric can you get, the way that he fused the lineage, the history of Indian philosophy and Tantra, and then all of the different psychological modalities, therapeutic modalities that he brought to the commune, and that have proliferated. I mean, I use some of his techniques with my clients just because they're so good. But they're really like he's very East meets West and holistic in the way that he approached spirituality. So I'm very grateful to what Osho brought to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Me too. So how would people find you?
Yes. Remember the word Shamaya Tantra. So it's a tricky word. And it's spelled Shamaya. So you've heard of Maya, the illusion, Maya.
Mm-hmm.
So you just put a sh on the front of that, Shamaya Tantra. And you can find me at my websites, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, all through Shamaya Tantra.
Nice.
Yeah.
So the thing about what's happening in the world is it's actually opened the whole world up for you to work with people or share with people globally. We're no longer from Canada or Alberta or Calgary and Edmonton. The internet has made us global citizens in a way, even more than we were in a way, because we were, I think I considered myself that years ago, but this is a different level. And so folks can sit with you just like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do have clients from all different places in the world, and it's so cool to have that flexibility. And as much as we've maybe hesitated to use Zoom before we had to, there's a lot of perks actually. It's nice to not have to put pants on for a meeting.
I got a visual.
Yeah, and once you're finished a session, you can just close the lid to your laptop and you're there. You can do the practice right then and there. You don't have to drive home afterwards. So it has its perks, definitely.
Yeah, beautiful. So I know we could probably go on for a couple of hours. I know we could, and you know, even publicly, I'm going to invite you to the possibility that we could do this again, and you know, and go into some more depth, or share our own stories, or, you know, I'd like to do this, and I think that I love what you're bringing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation, David, and just the way that you've allowed for this really intimate space to unfold that we've touched. And yeah, I am very open to us doing this again.
Thank you. Yeah. So I what I did is I booked some other things. So I because I know that part of me would say, well, we could be here till 3 o'clock. So let's not, we'll promise them more in a while. You know, and
That sounds perfect.
yes. And so thank you so much. And I have your links. I'll link to all of this that we've done a little later today. And I just love you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's been beautiful.
We'll talk soon.
Okay, enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Yes, yeah. I'm actually serving today at one of the treatment centers where I work part-time. And so I'm serving the men dinner, and I'm looking forward to that. And,
beautiful. I want to know how it goes with being intimate in that setting.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. Thank you. Okay. Love you
All right.
lots. Thanks.
Much love. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.